Good morning, everybody. This is John Paul Mendoza, the Raging Verbalist, and you're on the Raging Verbalist. This is my weekly Facebook Live at 8 a.m. and we are out there in Facebook land. And of course, we're doing lots of interesting things given the fact that we have this coronavirus thing going on. Last week, we had a really good episode and we had a lot of great questions. We have some more questions, and we're going to get through those today. Also, remember that as always with me is the lovely Sandra, and as everybody say hello to Sandra. I do the wave. And so what I want you to always remember is that no matter what the crisis is, no what the problems are, is that you are always in control of your own emotions. You're always in control of what you decide how you react to something. Most people react to crises very poorly, and I can just tell you that it is a bad way to go. My experience of doing lots of turnarounds is that I have faced crises nowhere near this, large in scale, but all crises have at their core is that the biggest thing that you have to remember is that it is what happens between your ears is more important than what happens outside of yourself. So it's all about the decisions you make. Also, some of you may notice because of the way that technology is working that when Sandra is on, she is in the matrix, and we have a video something going on, and all I can tell you is, and if you don't know what that is, well, you've got time to go watch it now. So having said all that, good morning, Sandra. How you doing?
I'm good. The Matrix is great. Thanks.
There you go. You got a blue pill, you got a red pill, you got
Exactly.
lots of colors, lots of colors. So
That's right.
excellent. So what we're going to do is we're going to kick it off with your questions, because last week we had a whole bunch of questions that we did not get to. We have prioritized them. Now this is your chance right now to start filling that up and putting more questions out there. And before we get kicked off on that, I just want to remind everybody that we jumped headstrong into this thing. The team, Gabe Batista, myself, and others, and we came up with a book. I will at some point in time tell you why we have two titles to the book, but right now, if you want to go to Amazon, you can go and find Remote Work for a Better World, Remote Work for a Better World. It is at a very favorable price of 99 cents. Come on, 99 cents. If you could go to Starbucks, you couldn't get out of Starbucks. I mean, I think they're starting to put a cover charge at Starbucks, almost. So go check that out. And it speaks to how to do remote work, which is what we're all being forced to do. Having said all that, and by the way, we always love 5-star reviews. 5-star reviews would be great. Sandra, what is the first question that we didn't get to last week and that we'll kick off with today?
All right. Are people even going to truly be productive working from home during this crisis?
Well, the interesting thing about it is that I have been working from my house. I moved out of my office. Let me quickly tell everybody a story. I was doing my signature job. I had a wonderful office. It was a corner office. I loved the office. I had worked my way around there. It is just like out of, a fiction piece that, you slowly but surely work yourself, and you have that corner office. And I had two walls of windows, and I could see everything. And I realized that I was spending a lot of time going back and forth to the office, carrying stuff back and forth, and just burning a lot of time on the road. And all of that sounds really cool, except I flew in really late one night and I ended up having to go by the office to pick some things up. So I get there, and of course I have the key card, and I get in late, and it's like 1 a.m, and I've got a 6 a.m. conference call. So I'm like, yeah, boy, I tell you, I'm gonna probably do that one probably from the house. Better make sure I have everything that I need. Rush into the office. I'm gonna do it quickly, get it all done. And I ended up forgetting a file. So I go home, don't get home until like 1:45, crash out. I get up early anyway, and I realized I don't have that file. Now you could try to fake it, but again, a conference call. And I jump in the car and drive to my office. Traffic sucks. Get there, and there it is, because I had just set it down for a moment, got distracted, and I do the conference call, and I said, man, there's got to be a better way. And that was kind of like that epiphany moment where I decided I needed to start working from my house. And I started doing that like 33 years ago and started building out a capability. Now, for all of you who haven't had that opportunity, you're now forced to do this. So how do you make yourself more productive? Well, the most important thing is that you have to eliminate as many distractions as you possibly can, and you have to build a workspace. Now, you may say, John, it's easy for you. You've been doing it for a number of years. However, I would point out that I work from the road when I could work from the road because I'm a road warrior. When I was doing my first big turnaround I did, I was on the road 43 weeks in 1 year. So I had to learn how to work from the road. So I'm going to tell you that you can build a workspace. And what you want to do is you want to build a workspace that you can then say, this is where I work. I don't want you to have laundry there. I don't want you to have other things there. What I want you to do is put all those things that are conducive to getting productive work done there. Now, maybe this is, you've got a laptop, maybe it's something else, but you want to build that workspace. And what you want to do is when you sit down is you want to take a breath, you want to take whatever bit of time, you want to kind of, and this isn't too metaphysical, hopefully, but what you want to do is say, look, I am in a space where I'm going to work and I'm going to focus on work and I'm going to get things done and I'm going to project that success. I'm going to project that power. I'm going to do those things. And if you do that, I believe that you will increase your productivity. Now, there's a word that comes with this, which is you have to be disciplined enough to do that. When I started building sales teams and I would have the sales team work remotely, what I would discover is that there were three types of people. There were some people that could never work from home because they couldn't get away from the distraction factor. Okay, I don't have a great piece of advice right now what to do with those people. But there were two other groups. Number one group, the best group, are people like myself, self-motivated. So my commute, just so everybody knows, my commute on and it doesn't vary, is I have 16 steps that I have to go down. 8 to the middle level, get my cup of decaf, brew the decaf, do all that. 8 down to the lower level to go into my office, and I'm there. So those 16 steps, that is the length of my commute. So I'm going to tell you that what you have to do is you have to develop a discipline that when you're in the workspace, you're working. It is very easy to get distracted. Humans love to be distracted. We invented social media to be distracted. We are a distraction crowd. So if you want to truly be productive, you have to be disciplined, you have to be focused, and you have to know what you want to accomplish. All right, next question, Sandra.
All right. How does a business person keep in a resourceful state?
Now, we're sitting here with the access today. Think about if this had happened 20 years ago. I mean, we would be, wow, 20 years ago, I don't even want to tell you. I don't want people getting dangerously close. I can't take away sharp objects or your belt or your shoelaces or any of those things. But 20 years ago, this would have been a real terrible nightmare. And why? Because 20 years ago, the speeds at which the internet progressed would mean that we would be on phone calls, we wouldn't be able to do video, we wouldn't be able to do the research we can do. So how do you stay resourceful? Well, I would start building out what resources that you need to put in place. Part of our motivation of writing the book isn't just to talk about Zoom, but it's all the ancillary things that you need to do with Zoom to make this productive, to build out that chain of resourceful materials so you have them right at your fingertips. Now is a perfect time to start accumulating and getting better at those. Every tool that you're ever going to use, you're going to go through a learning process, a learning curve, and becoming proficient. Well, let's not say proficient, become adequate at using it. So if you're a business person, now you have to sit down and start planning this out. Now, I don't care how you do it. Do you use you know, an iPad and a, pencil? Do you use a sheet of paper? Do you, use your laptop? I don't care how you do it, but what I want you to do is to start mapping out. So what resources do you have? And more importantly, what gaps exist? Now you say, John, but I don't know what I don't know, which is exactly correct, which is why you want to go out and say, okay, I'm missing something here. What does that look like? And how do I find it? Now, having said that, I don't want you to then get distracted and go watch funny memes and funny videos or God knows what else you're going to watch. I want you to is focus on finding the tools and then becoming capable with them because they're going to pay dividends today because you'll get through this crisis. But more importantly, they'll pay over an extended period of time. Because if you do that correctly, what you're going to find out is that you're going to be more successful coming out to the other side. So you stay resourceful by seriously going through and saying, what do I need to learn and how do I get that information and how do I do that? Now, lest you think that I know I'm trying to tell you I'm sitting here on some high mountain peak knowing how to do this every single day. You heard that right. Every single day, I spend time and energy putting resources into my brain bank. I work on adding capability every single day, learning how to do things. Part of the motivation of writing the book that we're going to, going to keep telling you about, which is Remote Work for a Better World, part of that came from a culmination of things that I had learned, but not just me, assembling a group of people to learn how to do them. So that's really important that you start developing a resource base to get the work that you need done. And that's very important. The most important tool is the tool that you'll use every single day. What's the next question, Sandra?
Yeah, kind of a part two with that one also is how do you feel good about selling in this coronavirus time?
So I deal a lot with people who are in a sales position or they're promoting, they're in advocacy position, they're doing that. So once we have our tools figured out, now we have to figure out how to keep ourselves, if you will, bucked up. How are we gonna be feeling good about it? And it's very easy to get sucked into the negative. I mean, if you watch the big board from Johns Hopkins and you look at all the red dots and you see all of that stuff, it's easy to kind of get a little bit on the unnerved side, on the freaked out side. However, I will point out to you that if you're in sales, there is no better time to start contacting people that you haven't talked to in a while. I just talked to somebody the other day who I hadn't talked to in 8 years, talked to somebody else I hadn't talked to in 6 years. And you know what? When I went to contact them, they were there. I have people who I know who know me, who haven't talked to me in years, reaching out to me. So part of it is to say, who are all those people I couldn't get a hold of, or for whatever reason we've lost contact, the lost soul file, if you will, and go just start calling those people, just start contacting them, start, sending things out. I find that text is one of the fastest ways. All the way, by the way, it actually tells you whether or not their phone still works. And it's surprising because I texted somebody who I hadn't talked to in a very long time. He actually has a service that we need for promoting the book. And I said, hey, it's been a long time. And he responded to me in less than 2 minutes. Now, normal circumstances, we probably would have done the dance back and forth for a period of time, but bang, we were right there. Bang, it was happening. So what I hope you do is you realize that probably 90% of the population is checking out, but those of us who are not, those 5 or 10%, so it isn't even 80-20, are going to see our chances of getting a hold of people. Now, with that, I will tell you that in all likelihood, the chance of you actually getting more business is tougher. However, you want to be top of the mind. How do we get to the top of their stack? How do we make sure they don't forget us? Well, that's why we want to go out and reach out to every single person we possibly can. That's how you stay productive in selling. See, if you view this as a sales slump, maybe back up for a second. I am the number one question that I'm asked by people who are not in sales, who are considering going into sales, or they're considering having their children go into sales. I know there's some parents that say that. And there's an owner who says, I think I'm going to, promote Sally or Ted or somebody to go into sales. And they always ask me the same question, phrased differently, but it's the same question, which is, do you think they will be successful in sales? Now, if I had that supreme predictive ability, I will tell you right now, I probably would not be doing Facebook Live. I would be, well, if Caesar's Palace was open, I'd be there, but they're not. But what I will point out to you is a very important thing, and that is you'll never know if you're going to be successful in sales unless you go through the worst sales slump of your life and you don't quit. You don't fall victim to the booze and the drugs and get abusive with your spouse and, drive yourself to self-destruction, but that you get up every day in spite of the headwind, in spite of the issues, in spite of the problems, and do what you're supposed to do to advance the situation, advance the cause. If you can do that in spite of that worst slump, then you in fact will be successful in sales. If you can think of this as an imposed slump, the universe just changed, the planet has changed, 300 million people in the US are on lockdown. All I can tell you is that is a slump. Can you get up and do the right thing day in and day out in spite of all of that? Because when you do, at the end, you will be more successful than you are today. All right. So, what's our next question?
All right. What is the number one thing I will get out of this book?
So, when we put together the book, and I think it's important to tell the story a little bit. So, Gabe and I were in the process of doing the promotional work, the book launch for Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes. Look at the screen behind me. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. So think about it. Took me 30 years and finding somebody who was the right person, Gabe. Took us 2 years of real hard effort and putting together a team. And we had set a date of March the 17th to launch the book. Anybody want to look at the kind of headwinds that happened on March the 17th? March 17th was a great day to pick. St. Patrick's Day parade in New York. Now we weren't going to have a float and, have Gabe and I go down and wave to the crowd or anything, but pick March 17th. What could go wrong? Well, a global pandemic could go wrong. So while we were meeting in early March and we were sitting there, well, I said, Gabe, this is what and he had flown to Southern California. We basically did what we had done before, which is lock ourselves into a room and worked hard and vigorously hours a day. And I said, we're going to have to actually get a different book out. And we talked about it, and it was a book that would become called Survive the Quarantine, which, by the way, that title didn't make it through the Amazon filtration process. So they said no. So we had to rename it Remote Work for a Better World. So what's the number one thing I want you to get out of this is the fact that there are ways and methods and means by which you can communicate effectively by using Zoom meetings, which is a platform, but just using Zoom is not enough. You have to use a variety of things. So we assembled a team of those people that we knew. We were talking about, 9 time zones, 3 continents. I think we're talking 4 or 5 countries, put everybody together. And we put that together in less than 2 weeks. So the number one thing I think you're going to get out of the book, and by the way, it's 99 cents on Amazon. Come on, if you can't figure that out, what is the story with that? But the number one thing you're going to get out of it is a sense that this is going to not be just for this season. It's going to change things in a very big way over time. And because of that, you're going to want to be very skilled and very adept. My simple prediction, predictions are always dangerous, but my simple prediction is that after this crisis is over, those who know how to do remote work will in fact continue to leverage the things that they're going to learn given this crisis. That pressurized situation will help you become better than you are today or were before. And in fact, I believe is going to change in a very positive way when we get to the other side. But right now, the number one thing is a mindset shift, which allows you to accept the fact that remote work is not only possible, but very productive and very capable. All right, what else? What is our next question?
All right, I'm going to skip over to a new online question.
Oh, excellent.
Let's see. Won't sales results suffer if you have salespeople working remotely?
Well, part of it is that you're going to the answer is yes and no. So how's that for a good nebulous political politician answer? If you have people working remotely, you're going to have to learn how to manage them differently. And you're going to have to deal with them differently because of course they're going to, you know, they have to go through its own process. Again, I would shamelessly say all your people should read the book so they understand and learn how to use remote work in the best possible way. The other part is that you need to now develop a system and a method of keeping track of people and when they're working and when they're not. Now, this is relatively simple. We have the tools and capabilities to do that today. However, you have to learn how to use them. You have to learn how to work with that. And the biggest thing is that you want to contact them on a regular basis and have them give you a an overview of what they're working on, what they're doing. Now, this should not be lengthy. You shouldn't get into a long conversation. When I was managing 19 salespeople in a turnaround situation, I would call them on the phone and say, give me your good, your bad, and your ugly. Tell me what's going on, and you've got X number of minutes. Now, with 19, I couldn't call everybody every day. And what I did is I ended up with a hierarchy. Those who were doing the most business got the most calls, and those who were doing the least business, I started to wonder about how to replace them. But the most important thing is to explain to them every time I call you, you should be ready to answer the following three questions. Number one is what good? Tell me the good things are going on and make it brief, make it short. I don't need to hear the story about how, we loaded the sled, we hooked up the reindeer, and then we went off to the woods, and then we went this way, and then, well, the stream was a little, okay. Salespeople love to tell stories. They're like frustrated fiction writers. Okay, let's get to what we got. Number two is the bad. By the way, this person's unhappy. This person's unhappy. And number three is ugly. We have a real problem and a real situation going on. The ratio that I use, the ratio that we talk about in our first book, Most Businesses Fail in the First 5 Minutes, is that what you have is you want them to never have more than, this is the ratio, 3 good, 2 bad, 1 ugly. But they should be able to go through that very rapidly. And if they say, well, I'm having a hard time keeping track of it, well, give you a tool. How about this thing called Google Docs? And open it up, and they put up the date today. Wow, let's see. April the 4th, right? That's today's date. And then they would put it in and say, here's my good, here's my bad, and here's my ugly. And then when you call them up on the phone, they say, here they are. And they read through the list, and you go through it and you understand it. Part of it is keeping on top of them, because self-discipline is a very short commodity. I mean, short supply. So you have to supply that externally. That's what sales management is all about. To make them more productive, you have to stay on top of them, and you have to see what they're going to do. We have a tendency to out of sight, out of mind, ignore them, and that's a mistake. All right, Sandra, what's our next question?
How do you think media will affect change in television, radio, podcasts, and print during this time?
So right now we have swung decidedly negative, and we are talking about things like crazy. So let's just get a little perspective. If you watch too much media, I believe it will just collapse and compress your brain. And I mean that, of course, metaphorically. And the reason why I say that is that if I have to hear one more idiotic reporter say, when are we going to end up with a vaccine? Well, let's say the big giant black plague took out a third of the population of the planet. I hope we're not going to get anywhere near that. but think about it, took out a third of the population of the planet and took about 100 years for it to complete its full cycle. Now, right now, we have people saying, how come we don't have a vaccine and we're just a few months into it? If you ever look at the amount of regulation, for a reason, by the way, that it takes to go and prove something works and that we're going to give it to people. I mean, who wants to sign up to be the guinea pig? Who wants to sign up to be the, well, it's unproven, but we think it's going to be okay. Well, would you take it? Well, no, that's why we have you. So what media is doing is it's doing this distortion, and what you have to be is understand that we have to insulate ourselves from it, but also be aware of it, because when you talk to prospects and customers and those who work for you, this is the thing that is dominating their minds. It is blotting out the sun, if you will, inside of their heads. It is driving them to distraction. So what I like to do is I like to send people insights and information and try to get them to think differently. One of the motivations of putting together the book is that the embers of this book, the initial thoughts of doing this book, have been around in my head for several years. Why? Because I couldn't believe how many times I've met people who say, well, I can't work because dot, dot, dot. I mean, you talk about alibis and excuses, but everybody had an excuse. Whereas I had already mastered to a certain extent. No, nobody ever gets to the perfection stage, but mastered how to deal with doing these things remotely. You'd be surprised how many times I've had people say to me, how in the world did you get this done? Oh, my favorite one is that I was sitting there and we were at a timeshare. My wife got one of those deals, you spend virtually no money and you get to spend a week, but you got to go hear the pitch. So their pitch is always about how, you need to do more vacations, do more vacations. Well, we were on vacation, but John's style vacation, my style vacation. And I had taken a picture on my phone of the studio I had set up with the green screen in their location. And the woman, now I would not recommend this. This is not a great way to build rapport with potential prospects. And she said, that's just crazy. That's just nuts. Are you kidding me? You travel with all of that? And then she looked at my wife to improve and enhance her ability to sell us and say, and you put up with this stuff? Always a good rapport builder. For those of you who are taking notes, use this when you want to make sure you never sell to somebody. The point of it is that we need to deal with the media and try to get people onto a more productive track. Now, I'm not saying you're going to be 100% successful, but what you want to do is point out to them that, you know what? Life is short. We're going to get a lot of things done, and do not, under any circumstance, fall into the trap of where all you're thinking about is the negative. The media will love the negative. And by the way, the negative will linger for months, if not years. You're going to have people talking about this. Don't believe me? I have an historical reference to that. My parents lived through the Great Depression. They were very young. And for my entire existence, sadly, they're both gone, is that I heard about this evil thing that happened to them when they were very young. And I heard about it over and over and over again. I'll never forget my parents getting a present from a friend of theirs. And the friend bought them, again, got to understand, this is practical times, bought them an electric blanket. I grew up in Denver. So I bought them this beautiful electric blanket. And I thought, wow, that's cool. And I said to my mom, let's open that baby up, because I mean, I want to, anything that plugs into the wall when you're as precocious as I am was like a cool thing. And my mother took that and said, nope, it's in this beautiful plastic sealed bag. And she wouldn't open it. I said, but isn't it going to make you warm? Is it going to make you feel better? Is it going to take away the cold? Is it going to do all those things? She goes, but if we use it now, what if we need it down the road? Irony of it is that we skip ahead. I'm now beyond that, much older, and I'm there and I'm helping, come back home and I'm helping at the house, rearrange some stuff, doing the good son thing. And here is in the closet, still sealed. Now it's like 10, 12 years later, is the electric blanket. And I said, you think it's time for us to break this thing out? She goes, well, okay. Now, that is a lingering effect. And by the way, that lingering effect, and I feel I had a certain mindset when I was young, and I'm different now. But see, that mindset stopped them, retarded them from enjoying parts of their life. And what's going to happen is when this thing passes, there will be a bunch of people who will have a residual effect from this. There will be people who will say, wow, oh, remember that. All I'm going to tell you is you need to have short memories if you're going to deal with crises, because once the crisis is over, you have to drop the emotion, learn the lesson, and move on. All right, next question.
Okay. How do we keep a commission based sales team prospecting when they're out of their boiler room working from home?
Well, I think it ties into the last thing. So part of it is the fact that you have to set some kind of numerical goals. You have to sit there and say, we have to get things done every day. How many people are you trying to contact? We can't necessarily expect the same level of sales, but what we can do is expect that they're going to keep their activity level up. If you don't keep your activity level up, if you don't do, see, I'm right now busier than I have been in a while. And why? Because the deals I have that I was working on, a lot of this stuff has gone into, you know, ever heard this expression? The show has gone on to hiatus. See, that's a nice way of saying we didn't cancel the show on television, we put it in hiatus. Now, all I can tell you is if you've ever met anybody who's produced a show, happen to have an opportunity to have, friends who have done shows and built very successful shows, hiatus is not a good word. Hiatus means we're on pause. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that they have productivity goals and that they're working away at it, and they're again getting better and honing their skills. Now we're back to tools. So one of the things that we want to ask them is how many contacts did you make a day? It's very simple. How many contacts you make a day? Keep track of how many contacts you make a day. And you need to keep their productivity high. And how are you making those contacts? Is it email? Is it text? Is it phone? Is it Zoom? How are you doing that? Because those are the raw numbers. Now, what is appropriate given what you're selling? You have to determine that. But for the most part, I see that people never keep track of how many contacts they make. And in fact, what you want to do is you want to raise your productivity up, because right now I can tell you two things with great certainty. Number one is that virtually nothing is going out into the mail. Wait a second. Yeah, I said that. Snail mail. Nothing's going on in the mail. You ever want to get a hold of somebody? You can mail them to it today because that stack is pretty thin. Second thing is that going back to somebody with something meaningful that you want to talk about, which does not focus on this situation, and talk to them about what you're trying to do today and what you believe you can do when this whole thing ends. But you need to do it by having numerical targets and working through those targets each and every day and keeping on top of them. And it is the fastest way to keep track of them and make sure that they're on it. So the good, bad, and ugly is to make sure that they're doing some in-depth things, but the number of calls that they're going to make. Now, having said that, if you're out there and you have somebody who you work for and they say, well, you need to make X number of contacts a day. Now I changed it. It used to be phone calls, right? Because that was the big Mac Daddy of how to get a hold of people. So when I got into the technology business, I found out that the average salesperson made 6 meetings a week. 6. Now, I said, that sounds pretty low. Sounds pretty ridiculous. Is it that we don't have enough people to see? I also found out that the average salesperson did 8 to 12 phone calls a day. I went, wow, that seems a little low. So when I became the first time I ever became number one in selling, and this was in high tech, my goal was 50 calls a day. Now, did my boss set that goal for me? No. In fact, she didn't even think in these terms. And my goal for meetings is I had to do at least 12 meetings a week. Why? Because it was double what my competitors were doing. When I started having people work for me and I started imposing these numerical targets. Now, I didn't want them to just do what I called howdy calls. You know, you drive by and you go, howdy, and that's it. I wanted them to actually do real work. Now, when I did that, I ended up with the number one performing team. Now, I did chew through a few people in the process, but part of that is, again, discipline. You have to have discipline to get up every day and make the calls and do the texting and do the emails and do the Zoom meetings and do whatever you can to get their attention and get in front of them. If you do that every single day, what you'll discover is that you'll be significantly better at what you do and you'll stay in the game. See what happens when you don't work on your selling, when you're not talking to people, is that you essentially atrophy. I was selling to these guys who build simulators for helicopters, military helicopters. And it is like the coolest video game you've ever seen. Of course, has a lot of classified things, so they wouldn't let me sit in the simulator. But I got to watch a video of the simulator. Plus, I got to see the simulator. And I said, wow, I mean, you know, what's the simulator used for? Well, they said, well, listen, we put it into a tractor trailer and we take it out and the pilots will practice in the simulator. I'm thinking, wow, well, you mean it isn't like in the movies where they just, jump in the chopper and fly it around? And the answer was no, because you lose your capability just by sitting on your butt. So you have to keep working it. The same thing is true in selling, and the same thing is true in anything that you do, is that you must stay in the game. If you don't stay in the game, you're out of the game. It's that simple. Keep that in mind and you'll be much more successful. All right, I think we have time for one more question and I'll do a wrap up.
Okay, what are the top benefits this book can bring to my business or to my life?
Well, it's interesting because when you write a book like this and you're a bunch of type A, maybe triple A hard charging people and, have a great team, go up on the web and go to survivethequarantine.com, survivethequarantine.com, and you'll get a great overview of what we have. We sell the book there also under the original title, which is Survive the Quarantine. And if you look at it and you're putting this thing out there to the world, you never know what you're going to get. You never know what that unexpected something is going to be. And we get it up on Amazon. We finally make it through the gauntlet. We finally get the cover remote work for a better world out there. And the very first review that we got was from a grandmother in Pennsylvania, 78 years old. This is not in our top demographic of who we think is going to buy the book. And what she does is she goes out there and we contacted her because she came back through our website. So we contact her. And the story is that she was feeling very isolated. She couldn't see her grandkids. She couldn't see her kids. But more importantly is that she was very active, an active 78-year-old. And therefore, she couldn't do her Bible study that she ran. She couldn't connect with her friends. And this is very important because in her life, being on lockdown, this is not good. And she takes the book and she reads it, and it gives her enough confidence. And she now starts putting in place, using Zoom, using the techniques, the concepts that we talk about. And now she reconnects with all of these people. And by reconnecting with them, she actually starts teaching all of these seniors how to use Zoom. So now she's doing the Bible study. She's feeling more connected. She feels like this is going to be a great area that they can all work in. She's now seeing her grandkids, and now she's using it in a way that we didn't actually expect. And that's actually very very powerful for us. It's such a great, rewarding feeling to think that here she is, and she's now been able to connect back to her world. If she can do that at 78 years old, if she can figure this out and take what we have put out there, what I believe is the big breakthrough for the book is that that means every one of you has no excuse to not go and embrace it and grab it and learn it. It's 99 cents. But think about it, 78 years old, and every day, see, to her, every day is very precious. When you're, 20 something or 30 something, I mean, I've been there. It's a day, it's a few months, whatever. But in her life, these are precious moments. And frankly, I think that's the best thing I think can come out of the book is people figuring out how to connect, how to stay sane, and how to stay connected. All right, so let me wrap up by saying go to survivethequarantine.com. We are going to go beyond the book in the near future. We are going to go beyond that. But right now, go there. You can either get the book from us or you can go to Amazon and get it under the title Remote Work for a Better World. And here's what I believe is so important is that every single person, if you know somebody who's feeling isolated, feeling trapped, feeling out of sorts, I believe that if you now start doing what we're doing right now, which is think about it, you know, I'm here sitting in California. Sandra's in the Matrix, and we're communicating with all of you. And what I'm hoping is that we all learn that this thing that we're doing, this level of communication is not only possible, but in fact can take place immediately. We try to put in a lot of good insights and information and go beyond just a rah rah, this is good. What we try to do is say, this is how you can do it and also how you can do it better. And with that, I want to thank everyone who has joined us on this episode of Raging Verbalist. I want to thank Sandra for, being coming from the Matrix and delivering the questions to us. And I just want to say that this is John Paul Mendoza, the Raging Verbalist. I'm very proud of the team that came together, and in less than 3 weeks, we delivered Remote Work for a Better World. I hope you'll take the time to check it out, and more importantly, stay sane, stay connected, and stay safe. Thanks, everybody. Until next week.